Hi there, in this video you're going to learn how to convert fractions, decimals, and percents. First thing I need you to know is that the word percent literally means out of 100. Percent. Percent. Think of it like this. There are 100 cents in a dollar. So 100 cents make up one whole. Alright, 100% makes up one whole. If you have 20%, right, or 20 cents, it's like saying 20 out of 100. Alright, so converting a decimal to a percent. So I wrote it like this for a reason, right? This to a percent, I wrote it like that for a reason. So to change a decimal to a percent, you need to move the decimal 2 places to the right. 2 to the right. To a percent, move it 2 to the right. Or you can think of it as multiplying by 100. So the first example has 0.5. We're going to start by starting at the decimal point, and now you're going to move it 2 places to the right. So one place would be past the 5, and then another one would be another space after the 5. So here's the decimal. Okay, we're moving it 2 to the right. 1, 2. So now you're at 50%. All right, your decimal point is technically at the end, but we don't really write it there. So we just leave it as 50%. So again, start at the decimal point and move it 2 places to the right. So it will be 50%. In the next example, we have negative 0.23. So here's the decimal point. We're going to move it 2 places right. So it'll be after the 3. So negative 23%. Again, 2.5, here's the decimal. So we're going to move it 2 places to the right, and you have 250%. And the last example is 1.04. So take the decimal and move it 2 places to the right, and you end up having 104%. So a little bit about these two examples for a minute. All right. You have a whole number of 2 here. A whole number of 1 represents 100%, right? One whole is 100%. This whole number of 2 represents 200%. And the 0.5 really means 50%, as we went over in the first example. So this makes sense that it's now 250%. 2.5 is 2 wholes and a half, or 250%. All right, and in the last one, we had 1.04, that's 100%. The one whole represents 100%, and the 0.04 is only 4%, so 104%. All right, next we have a percent to a decimal. You want to move the decimal 2 places to the left. Okay, so to a decimal, 2 to the left. So use this as a little trick, okay? The L in the word decimal kind of gives you a hint to move the decimal 2 to the left. Or same thing as saying divide by 100. All right, so take this 30% and either divide it by 100, 30 divided by 100, or move the decimal 2 places to the left. So normally the decimal would be here, all right, but it's not shown. It's not really shown, but it is always there. But it's not always shown in the real world. Just know it's there. And we're going to move 2 places to the left. So 1, 2 to get 0.30. In the next example, 22%. So the decimal starts here. All right, but we're really going to move it now 2 places to the left and get 0.22. In the next example, the decimal is here. We're going to move it 2 places left, and we have 0.004. And then in the last example, the decimal is really here. When we move it 2 places to the left, we now have 1.2. And again, if you get confused moving 2 places to the left, just take this number, 0.4, divide by 100. Take this number, 120, divide by 100. You will end up getting the same answers, okay? All right, moving on. Now when we're converting with fractions, all right, I want you to always change first to a decimal. All right, so whether you have a fraction to a percent problem or a percent to a fraction problem, convert first to a decimal and then convert what you need to do after that. So the first part is a fraction to a percent. In order to change a fraction to a decimal first, okay, you need to divide the numerator by the denominator. So here's our first example is 1/5. Whoops. Our first example is 1/5. Now, 1/5. Changing that to a decimal, you would do 1 divided by 5. Again, in your calculator, you would hit the 1 button, the division button, and the number 5. All right, to get 0.2. And from there, you're going to follow the decimal to percent rule. So here's our decimal. The decimal to percent rule says to a percent, 2 to the right. So start at the decimal and now go 2 to the right. Whoops. 1, 2. And then you end up at 20%. Our next example is 1 1/3. You have a whole number of 1. So you know right off the bat your decimal is 1 point something. All right, so write down 1 point, and then you have 1/3 at the end of it. To change a fraction to a decimal, again, 1 divided by 3, and you get 0.3 repeating. You should know how to write the repeating symbol, right? The repeating symbol goes over the repeating digit, which the repeating digit here is 3. All right, and now we're going to convert the decimal to a percent by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So 1 place would be here, 2 places. So what number is really after 3 repeating? It's not 0, it's really 3. So I just wrote this 0.3 repeating at the end of it because technically there really isn't a 0 here, there is a 3. Like here at the top, you could write 0.0, but you don't have to. Here, it's not 0.0. Here, it's 0.3 repeating. So that's why I put that there. But if it says round to the nearest whole number, then 133% is okay. And again, we got that by starting at the decimal and moving it 2 places to the right and recognizing that the number past the 3 is not a 0, but it's really another 3. All right, 24% now. We're going to follow the second set of instructions, which is a percent to a decimal, then to a fraction. So first, you want to convert the percent to a decimal using the rules that we had already gone over. So to a decimal means 2 to the left. So the decimal point is really at the end of this 24, but we're really going to move it now 2 places to the left. So now it's in front of the 24. And then in step 2 in the instructions, it says convert the decimal to a fraction by reading the decimal using place value. So 0.24 is not really read as 0.24. It's read as 24 hundredths. If you're confused, this is the tenths place, this is the hundredths place. All right, so this is technically 24 hundredths, which simplifies the 6/25ths. Divide the numerator and denominator by 4 and you get 6/25ths. All right, and in the last example, we have 1.7%. All right, so we are going to convert, or we have a percent to a fraction. So here's our percent. Even though there's a decimal, it's still a percent. There's a percent symbol. All right, so we're going to change this first to a decimal. So here's our decimal point. And we're going to now move it 2 places to the left. Whoops. We're going to move the 2 places to the left, and you end up with 0.017. All right, if you started the decimal point, if you started it here, you're now moving 2 places to the left. And then from there, reading it using proper place value, 0.017 is really read as 17 thousandths. All right, and just some concluding thoughts. Percent means out of 100. When converting to a percent, go 2 to the right. When converting to a decimal, move the decimal 2 to the left. And when converting with fractions, always change to a decimal first.